The United States government just made a devastating choice. A choice to deliberately starve its largest reservoir. Right now, as of mid-2026, the agency that controls the entire Colorado River is actively withholding water from Lake Mead, accelerating its decline toward oblivion. They are doing it to save another lake, an upstream reservoir called Lake Powell. That was itself on the verge of collapse. It's a desperate gamble, a catastrophic game of robbing Peter to pay Paul with the water supply of 40 million people. And as you watch this crisis unfold, let me know in the comments below, do you think this was a necessary evil or a fatal mistake? It's a debate happening in real time. Now, a lot of people watch these briefings and forget to do one simple thing that keeps this channel alive. If you value this kind of deep dive reporting and you want to stay ahead of what's coming next, please take 1 second and hit the subscribe button. It's an emergency for us, and it's the only way we can continue to bring you these stories. It truly is that important. Let's begin. This was a decision born from desperation. In early 2026, Lake Powell, the nation's second largest reservoir, was teetering just above its own power generation threshold. Its dam, Glen Canyon Dam, was about to go silent. So, the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation made an emergency call. They slashed the amount of water released from Glen Canyon, hoarding it in Lake Powell. It was a move, as UNLV hydrology professor David Creamer put it, to stave off total disaster. But that water was supposed to flow downstream. It was supposed to replenish Lake Mead. That choice, made hundreds of miles away in Arizona, is now sending shockwaves through Nevada, California, and Mexico. Lake Mead's water level, already hovering at a perilous 1,050 feet, has begun to fall. Faster, the move saved Lake Powell. For now. But did it just trade one catastrophe for another? Or did it just push the entire system one step closer to an endgame that no one is prepared for? Because beneath this one impossible choice lies a much deeper problem. A problem measured not in lake levels, but in days. There is a deadline. A hard stop. December 31st, 2026. On that date, the century-old rules that govern the entire Colorado River expire. And vanish. The countdown has already begun. The Colorado River was never what they thought it was. Its entire modern existence is built on a single, catastrophic miscalculation. When 7 state commissioners gathered in Santa Fe, New Mexico, on a cold November day in 1922, they signed a document that would define the American West for the next 100 years. The Colorado River Compact. It was a gentleman's agreement designed to divide the river's bounty between the fast-growing states of the lower basin California, Arizona, and Nevada, and the sparsely populated states of the upper basin Colorado, Utah, Wyoming, and New Mexico. They allocated a staggering 15 million acre-feet of water per year, a number that seemed both fair and sustainable. A number pulled from the river flow data of the previous 2 decades. The problem is, those 2 decades were some of the wettest in the last 1,200 years. They were measuring a flood and calling it average. They had signed a contract promising more water than the river in a normal year could ever deliver. It was not a sustainable system. It never was. For decades, that mathematical error didn't matter. The upper basin states weren't using their full share, and 2 massive reservoirs, Lake Powell and Lake Mead, were built to act as the system's savings accounts. Completed in 1936, Hoover Dam created Lake Mead, a marvel of engineering holding up to 28.23 million acre-feet of water. Glen Canyon Dam followed, creating Lake Powell. Together, they could store 4 times the river's entire annual flow. They were a buffer against reality. But you cannot defy math forever. As the West exploded in population, as millions of acres of farmland were irrigated in arid landscapes, the withdrawals started to exceed the deposits. The savings accounts began to drain. Then came the year 2000, the start of a megadrought, intensified by a warming climate that has now gripped the region for over 25 relentless years. The inflow from the Rocky Mountain snowpack, the river's lifeblood, dwindled. The demand did not. The system was hollowing out from the inside. This isn't just about low water. It's about a political crisis reaching a boiling point. The 7 states that rely on this river are now locked in a bitter, high-stakes negotiation with a non-negotiable deadline. And it is going nowhere. The upper basin states argue they are blameless. The drought is nature's enforcer. They can't use water that doesn't physically arrive in their states. They refuse mandatory cuts. The lower basin states, who consume the vast majority of the water, fire back. This is a shared crisis that demands shared sacrifice. Standing at the center of this firestorm is California, represented by J.B. Hamby, a man tasked with defending his state's claim to the single largest share of the river. He speaks of a historic time of reckoning. He is not wrong. California's position is fortified by a century of water law, a legal framework so old it predates the 1922 Compact itself. As you hear these arguments, the upper basin's plea of natural limits versus the lower basin's demand for shared cuts, who do you think is right? Is there a fair way to divide a shrinking pie? Let me know your honest thoughts in the comments. It's a question that will soon be answered, one way or another. Leading the federal agency caught in the middle is Aubrey Betancourt, the newly nominated commissioner of the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation. Nominated in June 2026, she is a third-generation California farmer, stepping into what is arguably the most volatile water crisis in American history, just months before the old law's collapse. Before her, Commissioner Camille Kalimlum-Toten famously drew a line in the sand in 2022, demanding the states figure out how to cut up to 4 million acre-feet of use, or the federal government would do it for them. They didn't. And now the clock has almost run out. If no deal is reached by December 31st, the alternative is chaos. Federal intervention on an unprecedented scale. Or, worse, a multi-state legal war that could rage for years in the Supreme Court while the reservoirs themselves run dry. John Berggren of Western Resource Advocates put it bluntly. The system is on a knife's edge between being okay and being in a very scary, catastrophic situation. That knife's edge is measured in feet. 2 numbers that dictate the fate of the entire Southwest. The first number is 950. That is 950 feet above mean sea level. This is the elevation at which Lake Mead hits minimum power pool. At this level, the pressure is no longer great enough to spin the massive hydroelectric turbines inside Hoover Dam. The power stations that generate enough electricity for 1.3 million people go silent. This is not a trivial event. Hoover Dam is a titan of the Western power grid. It provides cheap, reliable baseline power that stabilizes the entire region. Losing it means utilities have to scramble to buy more expensive, often dirtier, power on the open market. It means a grid already strained by summer heat waves loses one of its most critical shock absorbers. The lights don't just go out in Vegas. The cost of keeping them on spikes across 3 states. And this isn't a distant threat. In May 2026, the Bureau of Reclamation's own models predicted the lake could fall below 1,020 feet by summer 2027. Dangerously close. The second number is worse. It is 895. 895 feet. That is the elevation of dead pool, a term that is exactly as final as it sounds. At this level, water physically cannot flow past the dam via gravity. The concrete intakes that send water downstream to Arizona, to California's massive agricultural districts, and to Mexico run dry. The river, for all practical purposes, stops here. This is the point of no return. The moment where a water crisis becomes a humanitarian catastrophe. It means the water supply from major sections of Phoenix and other Arizona cities, which rely on the Central Arizona Project Canal fed by Lake Mead, could be functionally turned off. It means the water that irrigates 5.5 million acres of farmland, growing a huge portion of America's winter vegetables, simply ceases to arrive. The economic fallout isn't measured in billions. It's measured in trillions. The Colorado River Basin underpins a $4 trillion regional economy. Dead pool is the end of the line. And the decision to hoard water upstream in Lake Powell is pushing Mead closer to that line, faster than anyone expected. If this information is valuable to you, if it helps you understand the world just a little bit better, please consider sharing this video with your family and hitting that like button. Awareness is the first step, and a lot of people in these regions don't know the full story. But here is where the story takes a turn no one expects. Here is what they don't tell you. While Arizona and California face the terrifying prospect of their water spigot being turned off at 895 feet, one city will be fine. The one city that shouldn't even exist here. Las Vegas. Las Vegas will not run out of water. Not at minimum power pool. Not even at dead pool. For years, the world has watched Lake Mead shrink, seeing the iconic bathtub ring of white minerals stain the canyon walls. A visual symbol of impending doom for the city of spectacle. But a quiet, audacious engineering project, completed years ago, made that narrative obsolete. In 2015, while the lake was still relatively stable, the Southern Nevada Water Authority, or SNWA, approved a project born of pure paranoia. They saw the long-term trend lines. They understood the flawed math of the 1922 compact. And they planned for a future most people considered science fiction. They decided to build a drain at the very bottom of the lake. It's called the Low Lake Level Pumping Station, connected to a massive 26-foot diameter tunnel known as Intake Number 3. It cost the residents of southern Nevada over $500 million. $522 million. The project involved drilling miles through solid rock to build an intake deep in the lake bed. So deep, it sits near the very bottom. It allows Las Vegas to pump 900 million gallons a day directly out of the lake, entirely bypassing the gravity-fed system of Hoover Dam. So when people talk about dead pool at 895 feet, they are talking about the moment the dam's outlets go dry. They are not talking about Las Vegas. The city's planners, with unsettling foresight, built themselves a lifeboat. They can keep pumping water long after it stops flowing to everyone else downstream. It's an incredible paradox. The city built in the driest desert in North America, the poster child for unsustainable growth, has engineered its way to becoming the most secure water user in the entire lower basin. While farmers in California and subdivisions in Arizona stare at the 895-foot cliff, Las Vegas is watching from a position of relative safety. They bought their survival for $500 million, a tax on existence in an impossible place. I know, you've heard this before, but it's really the only way this works. We get millions of views from people who get incredible value from these deep dives, but most forget to subscribe. If that's you, and you want us to keep going, please, just take a second and click that button. It means everything. The survival of Las Vegas, however, reveals the brutal truth of the Colorado River. The real fight isn't about cities versus nature. It's about who has the oldest piece of paper. The entire system is built on a hierarchy of rights called the law of the river. And at the very top of that hierarchy are entities with something called present perfected rights. These are water rights established before the 1922 compact was even signed. They are the most senior, most legally untouchable rights on the entire river. And they don't belong to the cities. They belong to agriculture. Specifically, to bodies like the Imperial Irrigation District, or ID, in Southern California. The ID holds the single largest and most senior entitlement to Colorado River water. They are legally entitled to receive their full share of water before major cities like Phoenix, or even parts of Los Angeles, receive theirs. This is the brutal, century-old math that governs who gets water and who doesn't. So when you imagine a crisis, don't imagine the Las Vegas Strip going dark. Imagine this: farmers in the Imperial Valley of California continuing to irrigate vast fields of alfalfa, a thirsty crop often exported to feed cattle overseas, while the taps in suburban Phoenix neighborhoods run dry. That is not an exaggeration. That is the legal reality of the law of the river. This is why California's negotiator, J.B. Hamby, who is also the chairman of the ID's board, holds such a powerful position. He is not just fighting for California's cities. He is defending the ironclad rights of the agricultural district that gets its water first, no matter what. This is the conflict that the December 2026 deadline is forcing into the open. Can a legal framework designed in the 19th century for an agrarian society possibly survive the realities of the 21st century urban West? The states know the math is broken. Even with perfect conservation, there simply is not enough water to satisfy the century-old promises. That's why, in a stunning move on June 3rd, 2026, the Bureau of Reclamation signed a memorandum of understanding with Arizona, California, and Nevada. The goal, to urgently explore massive technologically ambitious projects to artificially create new water for the system. They are talking about building large-scale ocean desalination plants and advanced wastewater purification facilities. It's an admission that conservation alone isn't enough. They can't just shrink the demand, they have to somehow increase the supply. But these are multi-billion-dollar projects that take a decade or more to build. They are a solution for 2040, not for the crisis staring them down in 2027. It's a necessary dream, but it's a distant one. In the short term, there is no magic bullet. There is no new water. There is only what's left in the two dwindling reservoirs. And even that is more complicated than it looks. The lake is not just an empty basin waiting for rain. Decades of sediment, washed down the Colorado, have been settling on the bottom, slowly raising the lake floor. Lake Mead is not just losing water from the top, it is losing physical storage capacity from the bottom. The bathtub isn't just emptying, it's getting smaller. Okay, I know, it's the second time. It feels like a commercial break. But look at our analytics. The number of you watching versus the number who subscribe, it's a drought of its own. It takes one click for you, but for us, it determines if we can fund the next investigation. So please, if you haven't yet, hit subscribe. It's so important. Everything comes back to the deadline. December 31st, 2026. Every meeting ends in deadlock. Every proposal is met with a counterproposal. The upper basin holds firm. The lower basin demands sacrifice. California wields its senior rights like a shield. Arizona, with the most junior rights in the lower basin, faces the most immediate and painful cuts. Nevada, having secured its supply through brute force engineering, plays the role of reformed water user, pointing to its astonishing success in conservation. Since 2002, Las Vegas has slashed its per capita water use by over 40%, all while its population boomed. It recycles nearly all of its indoor water and has outlawed useless ornamental grass. It is a model of urban water discipline. But even that discipline cannot solve the fundamental imbalance of the river itself. As 2026 wears on, the federal government's decision to sacrifice Mead for Powell looks increasingly grim. The short-term fix for the upstream dam has put the entire downstream system on a faster track to its breaking point. All eyes are now on Aubrey Betancourt and the Bureau of Reclamation. If the states cannot forge an agreement by the end of the year, will the federal government finally do what it has threatened for years? Will it impose its own solution? It's a scenario every state wants to avoid. It would trigger an explosion of litigation, tie up the river's management in court for a generation, and create a level of uncertainty that could cripple the region's economy. But the alternative, doing nothing and letting the lakes crash toward dead pool under a set of rules everyone knows are obsolete, is even worse. They are trapped. Trapped by a 100-year-old document written during a flood. Trapped by decades of unchecked growth. Trapped by a climate that is actively rewriting the rules of hydrology in real time. The engineering marvels, the dams, the tunnels, the canals, are monuments to a 20th century belief that nature could be tamed. That belief is now colliding with an unforgiving reality. The crisis on the Colorado River is no longer a slow-moving, abstract problem for the next generation. The decision in April 2026 to cut off Lake Mead's inflow was the sounding of an alarm. It was a signal that the time for gradual adjustments is over. The era of desperate choices has begun. What happens on January 1st, 2027 is utterly unknown. Will it be the beginning of a new, sustainable framework for the American West? Or will it be day one of a collapse that was a century in the making? 40 million people are waiting for the answer. The water in Lake Mead keeps dropping, and the